On guys, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of Dispersing the Cloud. Once again, I'm a little late. I'd like to say I've been busy, but I think a better word is distracted. So this video should have gone out on Sunday. It is now Friday, but I'm going to catch you guys up. This is episode 30, so we are more than halfway through. I think we're close to 40 books now for this year, doing reviews on them. Just let me give you a recap of the week, and that's not this week, it's the last week that you guys missed. I went camping my whole week, I guess, three good days of it, 3 or 4 days of it, was planning a camping trip, a little prep on Monday, and then I went into the immigrant wilderness with my buddy Casey, and we spent 3 days out there camping and hiking all over the place. If you guys have seen the immigrant wilderness video on my YouTube page, some of the same kind of area, and then I posted a little short video on my Instagram for you guys to check out. But that area is always amazing, always beautiful, always gives you a good chance to just kind of take a deep breath, reflect on where you are, what you're doing, and it actually gave me a lot of time to do that and some time to kind of visit some of the projects that I have in the works right now, and it's just open spaces, so it's space to breathe, kind of. I headed up to Ukiah after that. I played music for a church up there, and I was waiting for my nephew to be born. This camera is moving, and it's gonna bug me the entire time that we're recording, but I'm gonna try to keep messing with this so you guys keep me in frame. It'll just look like a slow pan the whole time down. It'll be great. So up to Ukiah, and then I'm talking right now with one of my now business partners, Rob Solari and Zales Media. I did the Cal Waste commercials with them. I'm working with them again to do a new project. So we had a couple meetings over the phone and kind of moving that a little forward on Sunday. This Sunday, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that. And you guys can kind of spread the word and maybe get involved a little bit with the program that we have going on for schools and kids. Pretty cool stuff. The process that week was really just on focusing in and taking time. I mean, I forgot how nice it is to just have nothing to do. The immigrant wilderness is, I mean, you're hiking 15 miles in. There's no signal at all in the immigrant wilderness, so you have no phone, you have no social media. Literally the only person to talk to is yourself, and then I had my buddy Casey with me to talk to as well. And so it's just a really nice opportunity to just get away from everything and just be. So I definitely took advantage of that. And for me, it was a nice refocus. I needed it. Like I said, I haven't been busy, I've been distracted. So a very good refocus for me. I'm going to attempt one more time to fix this camera. And then if it doesn't work, I'm just going to go with it. So bear with me real quick. Let me get this little thing in place. See if this works. Again, if it doesn't, I quit. And I'll just take it as is. All right, that'll be my last attempt. Hopefully that stays. Book of the week. This was actually an amazing book. You know, last week we did Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism, and I got to put that to practice hardcore. So now my books are fantastic, and my business is running much better because of it. The book of this week was The Fish That Ate the Whale, and this was a book recommended by Andrew Holiday. Ryan Holiday or Andrew Holiday? I've only read a couple of his books, so I'm messing up his name right now. I'm going to say it's Ryan Holiday. He is the one, Ego is the Enemy, and The Obstacle is the Way, those two books. And he recommended this book, The Fish That Ate the Whale, the story of Samuel Zemurray. He is one of the pioneers of bringing banana to the States and for us to start consuming the banana. It wasn't really a thing until, I want to say, the 1890s, if my memory serves me correct. Couple interesting facts about the banana, just that were in the book that I just found fascinating. Bananas don't have seeds. So if you want to plant a banana tree, banana trees are actually clones of whatever the first banana tree that grew. The other trees are clones of that. This is interesting for a couple different reasons. It's interesting because once a line of bananas goes extinct, that's it. There's no seeds for them. For instance, I'll talk about it a little later, but the Big Mike banana is the banana we really consumed up until the 1950s and 50s or 60s, and then no more Big Mike, went extinct. And so it's really fascinating. What you do is you take the trunk and you split it into thirds, and you plant those thirds, the trunk, the roots, and you split it into thirds, and then you plant those, and that gives you 3 more banana plants. It's amazing because exponentially you can grow a lot of banana plants, but it's kind of its own detriment is it doesn't have a seed. So if it dies out, it goes extinct, then you're out of bananas. So that was really amazing, and then that kind of made it interesting. There was a suggestion that the fruit in the Bible that it's referring to is not an apple. The suggestion is it's a banana. Bananas are very unique in the fact that they're a fruit with no seed. And then the other very interesting thing about them, I got a notification. Shut up. All right. The other interesting thing about them is they only yield fruit in a particular climate. And I believe it's close to the equator, and then the only exception of that is they bear fruit in Jerusalem, which blew my mind. That was a little weird and a little creepy. And the other weird thing about bananas is they have no season. So those are just kind of some weird facts from the book. And then the last weird fact from the book was Lehman Brothers actually started as a food goods store, and then they got into banking by loaning people lines of credit out of their food and goods stores. That was just kind of a weird, trippy fact that was in there as the story was building. But Samuel Zimmerman, so I'm going to go off my notes a little bit here, and I'm just going to wing the story. Samuel Zimmerman was this foreigner. He's a Russian Jew, and he comes over to America 30 years old just to make younger than that. I want to say he was like 25, just to make his living, right? He's there, he's going to make his living in a trade, right? He doesn't know what. And so he's been hanging out at the docks, and he notices that at the docks, the big company, which is United Fruit at the time, they're taking all the bananas off the ship, and they're shipping the greens across to California, and the ones that are kind of getting ripe stay there for sale, and then the ones that are already ripe as they come off the ship, they literally pick them off and toss them in a huge pile, and they're just basically trash to United Fruit. United Fruit doesn't want them, they don't want to sell them. To United Fruit, there is no profit in there. And so they basically, once they get off the boat, they have a 3-day life, and then they're no good whatsoever. And so he gets this wild idea. He's like, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell these bananas in 3 days, right? I'm going to buy the whole bunch. I'm going to rent a cart on the train, and if it's going to take 3 days to get there, if I can sell them all the day of, right, just to people on the street, I'm going to turn a profit of I think at the time he had $50. And so I think he buys all of them for $50, and then plus a little bit for the train. He spends every dime that he has to get all these bananas on this train. And then he doesn't have any more money, so he literally sleeps with bananas headed to California to sell them. Well, the train hits some stop, and it gets held up, and he realizes he's running out of time fast. A day goes by, 2 days go by, right? And so he starts to panic, and he hits up, he figures out, like, if I don't sell these bananas off this train, I'm going to lose everything that I have. So he's kind of under the gun, and he comes up with a little bit of a scheme. He hits up the guy at the telegraph place, and he says, hey, if you send a telegraph to the stops ahead of us, what I'll do, and tell them to get the merchants out, because I got fresh, ripe bananas right off here as a discount, right? I got to sell them. So it's a huge discount. You tell them to meet me at the train stop. I'm going to give you a percentage of what I make. So this guy sends all the telegrams, and sure enough, first stop, there's people there waiting for him. He sells some bananas, right? Next stop, people there waiting. Next stop. And then each town kind of tells the next town, like, hey, this guy's selling bananas. Bananas are good. They're ready to ripe. They're ready to go, right? So he ends up getting all the way over to, I think, San Francisco or California, and he's out. He just rides the train back. And so that was his system from then on. He would get on the train, he would telegraph ahead, say, I'm coming through with my ripe bananas, and a little bit of the market he started taking away from United Fruit. I found that extremely fascinating, and this was one of the quotes from the book. Are you a gambler by necessity? He had to be a gambler, right? There was no other way for him to get in the market. The market was saturated and controlled by United Fruit, and I relate to that a lot. Right now, we're going through the process of setting up school reads for this coming year. We already have like 3 or 4 set up, but I need 60, right? I need 60 schools to let me in and read to them. So if you guys have an elementary school you want me to come read at that I haven't read at in the last couple of years, message me underneath this, and I'd love to come read at your elementary school and share my book, Josh and the Sock Army, and talk about my dyslexia and my overcoming obstacles and all that jazz. But I relate because I'm taking a huge gamble. I took out a $10,000 loan to buy 5,000 of my own books to try to sell to schools, right? It's a huge gamble. The safe play would be buy very small amounts, sell at a high price, get a very small margin, and hopefully 5, 6, 7 years down the road, somebody will discover the book and be like, hey, we're going to give you a book deal for number 2. I don't have time for all that, right? I am a gambler by necessity. I have to speed up this process. So along with me pushing this book out, I'm partnering with one of my other friends who's a children's book author. We're trying to get her on the same program. I'm trying to publish 2 new books before the end of this year. So like, I'm a little bit of a gambler by necessity in kind of everything that I do. I thought that was great. Supreme Court ruling, unified fruit door. We're going to jump to that. So anyway, so he starts building his business like that, right? And they call them the jobber. A fruit jobber is someone who basically pushes bananas on carts. He's the lowest tier of the fruit industry, right, and the banana industry. Well, he starts to get a little more cash, and he gets his first boat, right? And so now he's controlling the shipping, right? And once he controls the shipping, he's getting a little bit bigger of the market. He still has a very small piece of the market, and United Fruit is really controlling all of it. But he's starting to get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. He ends up, let's kind of jump back to the notes here. So one of the things that really changed everything for him, right? He was very happy with his business, but he had a child. He had his firstborn son. And this is a quote that I know my brother has actually told me. He didn't get it from the book, but he said something along the same lines. Becoming a father changes the nature of the future. The inner voice begins to ask serious questions. And I can imagine this guy, right, who's an immigrant, who's making a decent living, has a kid, and is like, hey, I know I'm going hardcore right now, but I need to ramp it up, right? I need to start really, really expanding. So one of the things that he did to expand was he went into, started acquiring land. And part of the reason that people hate him today, I mean, the book even painted him in a negative light, was because he acquired so much land. But it's very interesting about him. He was buying land that people were telling him was worthless, right? So he's in, Guatemala, yeah. He's in Guatemala, I believe that's where he was. And this is down off, so this is, for those of you who don't know, this is in between where he's at, where bananas are really exported from, is in between the Panama Canal and South America. So that little thin strip of land, all those islands, that's where he's at, right? So he starts buying up all this land that people are telling him is basically useless. It's just thick jungle land and swamped out and nasty. And he goes in and he's hiring workers to literally just clear it by hand, right? So he buys the land real cheap because people just want to get rid of it. They say it's worthless. And he starts farming it out. And he starts innovating the way that they do the agriculture there. And he starts innovating the way that they actually farm the banana, and starts to be more profitable and more profitable and more profitable. And then this is where the story kind of starts taking some interesting changes, right? And so he's kind of got bananas going to America. He's got greens, he's got mid-range, and he's got ripes, right? He's got a little bit of everything on the bananas coming over. The government of Guatemala at the time, I believe, had a huge debt from the Brits, right? And they decide that in order to pay off their debt, what they're going to do is they're going to raise the tax on exports from 1 cent to 10 cents. And this is actually a huge deal at the time. And for him, it would actually cut into his margins and make it very difficult for him to keep doing business. So being a U.S. citizen, he went to the U.S. government because the U.S. government was actually helping them do this deal. And he was like, hey, I'm a big distributor of fruit, and if you add this tax to me from the 1 cent to the 10 cent, like, it's really going to hurt my business. And the government basically told him to, like, go piss off, right? And so he gets really upset, and he's like, okay, so you won't change it because you got to deal with this certain president who happens to be a corrupt dictator, right? And what if he wasn't president anymore? So this dude, in an effort to keep his business alive, he stages a coup. And a coup, I said it really weird. How come you're saying coup, Whip? A coup. He stages a coup, and he basically, there's a rebel force already, right? Because it's a dictator. So it's a communist dictator, and that. And so there's already a rebel force, and he's like, well, I'm just going to start helping the rebel force get this communist dictator out and get this back to a fair market, right? And so he overthrows the guy. He overthrows the guy and helps put somebody else in place, and he keeps his business going. This is actually a really good quote. This is not on topic, but I want to mention it so I don't forget some of this stuff. A man can free his soul only by exhausting his body. This guy was a hard worker. A hard worker, and really broke his back to get his business going. Fast forward a little bit to this is more craziness. He builds it to the point where United Fruit actually buys part of his business to get out of owning a monopoly, right? They were trying to prove to the court that they don't have a monopoly, so they bought part of his business, and eventually he sells out to United Fruit, right? He sells out. He sells everything. He gets stock options in United Fruit, and his company gets annexed in, and they get all of the land that he bought. I mean, he had just, that's how he was competing. They had to buy him. He was competing with United Fruit by literally buying up every piece of crappy land in Guatemala. And at one point, he owned like 75% of the public land owned. He owned it. And that's why people were so pissed at him. But in his defense, he bought it from public people. Like, they could have kept the land. He didn't force them to sell it. He didn't force them out. It's not like the government coming in and saying, sell your land or I'm going to shoot you. He wasn't a tyrant by any means, or a crook by any means. He literally was paying whatever they asked for the land because he needed it. He was actually trying to fend off disease. So when a banana gets a disease, there's no cure, and it spreads very rapidly. So when a farm would get a disease in it, he'd shut the farm down and open a new farm in a different plot of land, right, and let that land heal. That's kind of ironic. It's like a biblical principle. Like I think it's every 3 or 7 years, you're supposed to actually not do anything with the land and let the land heal to cleanse itself of disease and stuff like that. So that's essentially what he's doing, right? And so anyway, United Fruit now owns all this land in Guatemala, and I think we want to fast forward to, we're going to fast forward to United Fruit starts to go under, right? He's out of the picture for like 10, 15 years, and it might have been less, but it starts to go under, and so he starts to look at the business, and he realizes that they're doing a couple things wrong at the dock. They're doing something wrong over here. They're promoting people just because they're yes men, not because they know how to actually run the business. So he sends them a really nice letter and says, hey, here are the holes in your business. This is where I can help. And the company tells him, like, get out of here. We don't want your help. Like, we paid you so you would be uninvolved, right? So he gets a little ticked off. And what he does is he goes to shareholders, like little shareholders, who have like 4 or 5 shares, and he asks them for a proxy vote. He shows them all the holes in the business and says, hey, when I sold the company, right, my shares were worth $100 a share. They're worth $10 a share now. The company's going under. This is why it's going under. Can I have your proxy vote? Because I'm going to go have them I'm going to go appeal to them and try to get them to change this. He visits hundreds of shareholders, right, and gets all these proxy votes. And he's got like this thick stack of proxy votes in his briefcase. With the proxy votes and his vote, with all his shares, he has controlling stock in the company, right? They don't know that. So he goes in and he appeals to them one last time, and he's like, hey, these are the holes. This is what needs to be done. I think I can really help if you guys just let me in, put me in charge of some of this, and we can fix the problem. They blow him off again, right? They blow him off, and he storms out of the room, and he's all ticked off. And they think they've defeated the foreigner, right? Oh, yeah, we got this stupid foreigner out of here. And he goes down to his car or his horse or wherever he has his briefcase at this point. I don't even know what year it is. This is his car. So it's, at this point, it's I want to say it's like 1920. So he goes down to his car, gets his briefcase full of the proxies, comes back in. It's like a legendary story, and I'm sure it's been conflated a little bit. And he slams all the proxies on the table, and the table shakes. And he's like, well, you're freaking fired. I don't think he said freaking. How about that, right? And so he basically pushes this guy. The president's like, oh, snap, didn't see that coming. So now this guy who owned a very small fruit company that got bought out by this big one literally votes himself in as the new president of United Fruit, which is why it's called the fish that ate the whale, right? And so now he's in charge of United Fruit. Now he's the guy. And sure enough, like, it starts coming back, and he starts doing all this awesome stuff. He gets all of his land back and more, and he just starts running the snot out of this company. It starts getting really, really big. Right about that time, Bay of the Pigs starts to go down, right? And so there's another coup in the same area. The CIA gets involved with United Fruit and helps them overthrow the current government. They're using their ships to ship ammunition. They're using a lot of their resources to do their little dirty work down in South America. And after it's all said and done, they switch. I forget who the president was and who the new president came to, but basically they were fighting communism. And they switched that guy out, right? They get somebody new in there. And part of the reason they did that, part of the reason United Fruit was involved, because that dictator, right, he said that because United Fruit, right, this is a very communist thing to do, because United Fruit had so much land, they were going to take the land back and give it to poor people, right? And this is actually something in the book that I read, Economics in One Lesson. We talked about this already, where when you take farming land and you give it to a poor person who's not really a farmer or not a successful farmer, they don't really create jobs or agriculture or anything because they're not a good farmer. So the subsidy to create jobs or the subsidy to create a good farmer doesn't work, because if they're not good farmers on their own, they're not going to be good farmers with your help. That's not how it works. And so basically that's what ends up happening. And let me shut this notification off. And so they start taking his land. They take all of his land and they sell it back to him at like a horrible price. And again, he's like, well, if you're gonna do something that's very unjust to me, then I'm just gonna take you out of power. And so he teams up with the CIA. They do a little coup. They get him out. They get a new guy in. And when it's over, this is the best part. This is like totally America, totally CIA stuff. When it's over, the CIA just chucks him under the bus and lets the press and the American public like eat him alive. United Fruit starts going under hardcore just from bad press. Basically destroys the company that he built. Really a sad story. Like in the end, it was so frustrating to read because you see this guy who's busting his butt, who wants to do the right thing. And don't get me wrong, two wrongs don't make a right. Should he have been doing coups and overthrowing governments and all the above? I mean, to this day, that area is still just as poor as it has ever been. And part of the reason is because of the leaders that it has had. Has nothing to do with United Fruit, has nothing to do with this guy, although they do blame him for it. But when he was there, he had hundreds of workers working for him, and now there's nothing. There's nothing there. I say there's nothing. I'm sure there's some commerce, but it's not good. They're not in a good situation. I don't want to take away what little pride they have left. But it was kind of a sad story. Let me go through the last part of these notes just so I can see if I missed anything. That's kind of how it ends. United Fruit changes hands a couple times. They turn into Chiquita Banana, and then Chiquita Banana goes down. The guy who bought it commits suicide because it's so bad, and it's just it's a lot of nonsense. But let me go through these notes and let me see what I get out of this man for his soul. This was a really good quote. In every victory, there is a seed of defeat. Meaning, especially with the Bay of Pigs one, right? Yeah, he won, right? But there's still a seed of defeat because in the end, he lost. Because he did some questionably ethical things to defeat somebody in something that was definitely wrong. And so maybe that's like a reflective point to where even if something horribly wrong is being done to us, do we compromise our ethics to justify fixing that wrong done to us? And that goes back to Marcus Aurelius, like, if you take away I am harmed, you've taken away the pain of being harmed. Like, you just take away the statement, I have been harmed, and you have not been harmed. So, kind of living a reactionary life here. A new president, we went over that. They called it, he was buying land for songs because nobody wanted the land. Government takes it back. Sellout, did that. Proxy votes, we talked about that. CIA throws him under the bus. This kind of brought me to the final thought, right? How will this guy be remembered? I think if you ask a lot of people, and if you watch some Netflix documentaries on this actual subject, you're going to find out that people don't necessarily like Samuel Zimmerman. They think he is a corrupt piece of crap. They think he is someone who overthrew governments to keep his greedy business alive with bananas. Reading it from this book perspective, there were definitely some instances where the book was giving him some credit, but the book as a whole definitely says he did it the wrong way. I would say, man, I can't say I would have done something different. If someone's taken my land, I'm honoring. I'm going to fight for that. There's certain things in this world there's only a couple things in this world that I would die for. One is for us to have the freedom to worship any God we want and do whatever we want. I'm a hardcore libertarian. You do whatever you want as long as it doesn't affect me. I don't really care what you do. We have to have a choice, right? And I would die to have that choice. I'm with Benjamin Franklin. If you sacrifice liberty for security, you will get neither, and you deserve neither. And some of these things, man, like there's a government entity stealing my land from me and giving me a crappy buyout. If I have the means, like this guy had the means, he has the ships, he has the arms, he has the cash, and he has a rebel army, probably going. Let's go. All right, if you want to go, let's go. It's really hard, man. It's really hard trying to be an ethical business person, and at the same time, there's people around you who are like, well, I didn't get mine. I'm actually going through something right now, and I won't go into the details of it, but there's one entity that's upset that I'm making money in the same area that they're making money. I'm not doing anything wrong. They're just a little ticked that I'm making money. Some people need to tear down your castle just to build their castle. And that's just kind of life. And so, yeah, it's just a reflected thing on how we be remembered in this world. And I guess a good reminder is to try to be aware that this life is just a vapor. You know, Marcus Aurelius, this is one of my favorite quotes from him. You will soon be dust, or a skeleton, or a name. For what is a name but echoes of sound? That's it. Like, whether you build an empire, whether you have millions, whether you have $5, you're just going to be dust anyway. You're going to die. Well, this is a better example. My parents are going to die. I'm going to lay them to rest. And then my kids, or nephews probably, most likely, let's be honest. At this point, run out of time. My family's going to lay me to rest right after that. And then their family's going to lay them to rest right after that. In such a short period of time. We're talking about like 100 years. It's not a lot of time at all. You just, it's flashes. And so that was pretty, it was a great book. Read the book. A 5-star review. Samuel Zemuri is my freaking hero. He's a gangster. He's a G. He's a foreigner with nothing who made a life for himself in America. He is the American dream. Next week, we're going to be, I'm reading it right now, so Wounded Healer by Henry Nouwen, and Tribe by Sebastian Junger. I'm saying that last name wrong. I'll figure it out by then. National Night Out. Going to play there. Going to play at a church called Crossroads. I'll have a new nephew by then. I'll tell you guys about my new nephew. And then I'll have another meeting with Rob. And I'm going to talk to you about the new podcast that I'm going to be putting on, possibly in the Central Valley. So I could be traveling once a month to do a podcast up there with one of my buddies. I am going to leave you guys with this for this episode of Dispersing the Cloud. In every victory, there is a seed of defeat. So when you have victories, look for the seeds of defeat, and know that victories are moments that are to be celebrated. Very small moments where there's a calm in the storm, and then jump right back into the storm, because that's where great sailors are made. Follow me on my Instagram. My Twitter is always where I take my notes for the books that I'm reading. So if you guys want to see these notes before I go over them, you can always do that. And I'll talk to you guys soon.